Hey everyone, I'm Adam. I'm 24 now, but when I was 12, my life changed in an instant. My parents, Laura and Greg, chose my sister Emma over me, abandoned me in foster care under the pretense of financial struggles. They promised it was temporary, yet I spent years in silence watching their online posts light up with paradise vacations and family photos without me. Today, I'm sharing exactly how I turned that betrayal into the most satisfying justice they could ever imagine. I'm Adam, 24 now, but 12 when everything changed. Back then, our house was modest, but warm peeling wallpaper in the living room, my dad's beaten recliner in the corner, and my mom's tiny garden out back where she grew mint for tea. I loved Saturday mornings, the way sunlight filtered through our curtains, dust motes dancing as I spooned cereal. To me, that little house was home. My sister Emma was 2 years younger, but already a star. At 6, she'd win every art contest at school. Mom plastered her drawings across the fridge, doting on each pastel stroke. Grandparents called just to gush over her perfect grades. Every compliment she received felt like a spotlight, bright, warm, impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, I hovered at the edge, my own trophies gathering dust in a side cabinet. The medals I won in spelling bees and math contests barely earned more than a polite good job before Mom moved on to Emma's latest painting. It wasn't that Dad favored her more, he was just quieter. But the effect was the same. I felt invisible. When I scored the winning goal in my soccer match, Mom clapped politely, then leaned over to kiss Emma's cheek, saying, "Good job, sweetie," as if my victory was someone else's. My chest tightened whenever I watched her bask in attention I craved. Home smelled of lavender soap and fresh bread, but under the surface, something soured. I'd wander into the kitchen late at night hoping for a crumb of connection, but find only hushed whispers as Mom and Dad discussed bills. I once overheard Dad say, "We're barely scraping by," and a part of me wondered if that scraping by might have room for one child less. School felt equally strange. In class photos, Emma's freckled smile was front and center. I stood off to the side, half shadowed by her bright presence. Teachers would call on her first. Her hand shot up eagerly, and I waited awkwardly for my turn if there was time. On weekends, I practiced piano softly, so I wouldn't disturb my sister's dance lessons, which Mom recorded and sent to every aunt and uncle with a proud caption. Yet, despite the sting, I loved Emma. I'd help tie her shoelaces and read her bedtime stories even after a long day at school. Sometimes she'd hug me tight and whisper, "You're the best big brother." And for a moment, the unfairness faded. But those moments were fleeting. Soon, the accolades would swirl back to her. "Emma, look at this," Mom would gleefully cry, brandishing a trophy or a report card. I'd slip into my room, closing the door to the silence and the ache of being second fiddle. On my 12th birthday, I'd hoped things might shift. I saved up my allowance to buy a small cake and secretly decorated the dining room with crepe paper streamers. When Mom and Dad arrived home, they barely noticed. Dad gave me a quick pat on the back, distracted by a text from Grandma about Emma's upcoming recital. I pulled out the cake candles flickering and smiled at them both. The silence was deafening. Emma wandered in, said thanks for the cake before darting back out to practice her solo one more time. That night, as I lay in bed, I traced the ceiling cracks and wondered if I was just imagining it all. Was I really less important? Or was I too sensitive? I tried to push down the hurt, pretending everything was fine, but every good night felt hollow. Looking back, those early moments, tiny slights, muffled celebrations, the quiet pang when Emma's name was on everyone's lips, were the first fractures in my childhood. They weren't dramatic betrayals, just a slow, steady drip of neglect. Still, the ache grew, building a secret well of resentment inside me. Little did I know that well was filling fast, ready to overflow in ways I couldn't yet imagine. I still remember the ride to the foster home as if it were yesterday. Mom's hand trembled on the wheel. Dad stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight I wondered if it would crack. I clutched my duffel bag inside the few clothes I owned and my childhood treasures. A worn baseball glove, a photo of Emma and me at her kindergarten graduation. Silence hung between us like a storm cloud waiting to burst. When we arrived, the house looked nothing like ours. Neat brick facade, manicured lawn, cheerful red door. Two strangers stood waiting, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, the foster parents I'd only heard about from social workers. Their forced smiles did nothing to calm the knot in my stomach. "Welcome home, Adam," Mrs. Miller said, voice soft as cotton. "We're so happy you're here. Home." That word landed in my chest like a lead weight. Parents don't abandon kids at strangers' houses. Parents don't drive away without looking back. And yet here I was, stepping across the threshold into someone else's life. Inside, the Millers showed me to my new room, a twin bed with a bright quilt shelves with stuffed animals, a desk under the window. Everything felt staged, like a hotel suite for a guest they expected would leave at any moment. I unpacked mechanically, folding my t-shirts the way Mom had shown me, arranging my few books in neat rows. I picked up the photograph of Emma and me, tracing her smiling face before tucking it into my pocket. That night, I lay awake, listening to the Millers' muted conversation in the kitchen. "He seems quiet," I heard Mrs. Miller whisper. "Traumatized, maybe?" Mr. Miller replied. My chest tightened. Traumatized. I'd never thought of myself that way before, only invisible. School started 2 days later. I walked into a cafeteria full of strangers, stiff-backed kids who eyed me curiously. "New kid, what's your story?" I forced a smile and muttered foster care, and that was that. Nobody asked more. Nobody cared. It stung worse than the abandonment itself. At home that afternoon, I discovered the Millers had set up an email account for me. My name at millersmail.com? "Just until you get your own, Mrs. Miller said. But I didn't log in. I left the laptop closed. I didn't want another place where I felt like an intruder. Weeks passed. I learned the Millers' rhythms pancake breakfasts on Saturdays, a small allowance to do chores bedtime at 9. I tried to fit in, helped wash dishes, raked leaves in autumn, but every smile I forced felt heavy. My heart was still back in our old house, wondering why my parents chose to erase me. Then one evening, I overheard Mr. Miller on the phone, voice low and urgent. "Yes, I know they're your parents, but they left him. They abandoned him. He deserves answers." My head snapped up. I hadn't realized Mrs. Miller had reached out to the social worker again. Maybe they were trying to get me back home. Hope flared in my chest until Mr. Miller sighed. "We'll try, but no promises. The agency keeps saying it's in the child's best interest to stay." Best interest. The words echoed mockingly. My best interest would have been with the people who gave me life, not ones who shipped me off like a package. Over the next months, I slipped into a routine school homework chores, but always with that dull ache in my gut. I watched classmates celebrate birthdays, invite friends over, brag about weekend plans with family. I'd smile when someone asked, "What's your family like?" and say, "They live out of state," my voice flat. Inside, my chest clenched. During winter break, most kids went home. I stayed with the Millers, built snowmen, watched cheesy holiday films. They tried to include me, home-baked cookies, board games by the fire, but each effort felt like a hollow echo of what should have been. Then one night in January, curiosity got the better of me. I logged into the computer and typed in my parents' names on Google. My fingers trembled. What was I hoping to find? A news article begging for my return. A heartfelt apology. Instead, I found glossy travel blogs, Laura and Greg living in Bali 1 week, Paris the next. Emma grinning wide in front of the Eiffel Tower. Underneath, comments like, "You two are so brave." Living the dream, guys. Their captions gushed. Financial freedom isn't about money, it's about choices. Leaving baggage behind makes room for new adventures. Baggage. I felt my throat tighten. They'd used that word for me. My eyes stung. They'd lied about financial struggles to abandon me, but they could afford round-the-world adventures. I clicked deeper, photos of lavish dinners, rented villas, private boat trips. Each image was a knife twist. That night, I lay awake calculating. They said I weighed them down financially, yet they'd posted photos of every lavish expense without a hint of regret. I screenshot every image, saved every cruel caption. I named the folder Evidence. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I couldn't erase the truth again. High school came and went. I graduated with decent grades and a scholarship to state college. The Millers encouraged me, gifted me study guides, hugged me as I walked across the stage. I succeeded in spite of my parents' abandonment and because of the Millers' unwavering support. Still, every achievement felt tainted until I took back my narrative. By age 20, I had a plan. I'd confront my parents with the screenshots, expose their lies to everyone who still believed their polished facade. I'd make sure they felt the emptiness they'd left me with. But first, I needed patience. I needed to graduate, earn stable income, and ensure I was beyond their reach. Every holiday email they sent, every Facebook Life update, they fueled my resolve. One day, I'd serve them justice as precise and cold as their betrayal had been. For now, I waited, collecting pieces of truth, nurturing the quiet fire in my chest. The lonely boy who arrived at the Miller's doorstep was gone. In his place stood someone who would no longer accept being invisible. And that, I realized, was the true turning point, the moment I stopped waiting to be rescued and started planning my own rescue. My rescue from the past they tried to bury, and my escape toward a future they couldn't control. By the time I turned 19, I'd long since moved past the naive hope of reconciliation. College was my escape hatch, a chance to build a life separate from the scars of abandonment. I threw myself into my studies and a part-time job at the campus library, savoring the quiet among the stacks. For the first time, I felt seen. Professors praised my research papers, coworkers thanked me for organizing late-night study sessions, and friends invited me to group projects for my reliable focus. Yet under the surface of this new confidence lurked a simmering resentment. Every email notification from my parents stabbed like a rusty blade. "Happy holidays. We miss you so much," or "We'd love to see you this summer. Come join us in Greece." I clicked delete, heart pounding. How could they flaunt sun-soaked selfies against turquoise water when they'd left me shivering in January's foster home draft? Each message felt like an insult, a flaunting of privilege built on the very lie they used to abandon me. One evening, as I studied in the library, I overheard two classmates whispering at a table nearby. "Isn't your brother traveling with his family?" one asked. "Yeah," the other replied. "He's in Europe again. Must be nice, no rent, no bills, just free vacations." I paused, mid-note. They thought I was the lucky one, the child of glamorous globetrotters. Stunned, I realized the Miller's kindness had masked my true story. I was no privileged traveler. I was the forgotten son. That night, I logged back into my evidence folder. Screenshot after screenshot. Smiling photos of mom and dad living it up in Santorini, captions like, "Freedom is priceless, money can't buy happiness, but it sure funds adventures." I hit play on a short video clip. Mom swirling wine on a balcony overlooking the Mediterranean, calling it the best decision of our lives. I paused it on her carefree laugh. That laugh had echoed in my nightmares, the echo of their relief when they saw me as a burden lifted. Racing thoughts flooded in. I felt my heart hammering, skin prickling. "Breathe," I told myself. "Breathe." But the hot coil of rage wound tighter. Not here. Not now. Over the next semester, their attempts to insert themselves back into my life grew more elaborate. A birthday card arrived with a check for $50, insultingly small considering the cost of one night at the villa they'd posted online. A week later, a courier delivered a designer jacket labeled, "For my beloved son, love, mom and dad." I stared at the label, fingers trembling. Was this supposed to make me forget everything? Was this their idea of apology? I didn't answer their texts. I didn't pick up their calls. Instead, I forwarded their gifts and checks to a local youth charity under anonymous donation. My roommate Sarah pieced it together when she saw the shipping orders. "They're trying to buy your forgiveness," she said one evening, handing me a fresh cup of coffee in our cramped apartment. "Don't let them." Sarah was my rock then. She'd listened to every replay of my childhood nightmares and offered strategic counsel. If they want a relationship, they'll have to earn it. Not with gifts, but with truth. Her words crystallized my thinking. I resolved I would give them one last chance and ultimatum, but I'd frame it on my terms. I drafted an email, precise and unemotional, summarizing every lie they told. January 15th, 20X. You dropped me at that foster home claiming financial struggles. June 20th, 20X ed. You posted photos from our dream villa in Bali captioned, "Worth every cent." August 2nd, 20X. You promised you'd come back soon. I waited 5 years. I attached the screenshots dated and source verified. Then I paused. This was too raw, too direct. I needed leverage, something more public. After all, I wanted the world, not just them, to see their hypocrisy. I remembered the alumni bulletin at my college, a monthly newsletter sent to thousands of graduates, parents included. A platform. I drafted a short essay for the newsletter, euphemistically titled "Lessons in Forgiveness," about growing up in foster care, overcoming abandonment, and the power of true earned reconciliation. All I needed was one paragraph of truth. Sometimes forgiveness cannot be bought with gifts or empty promises. It must be earned through honesty and accountability. Published next month, it would reach their inboxes and ring out across our entire community. But before I hit send, doubt creeped in. Was I stooping to public shaming? Was I becoming vindictive? I stared at the screen, conflicted. Sarah noticed my hesitation. "They made this about performance, not love," she reminded me gently. "You're reclaiming your narrative. That's your power." With a steadying breath, I scheduled the essay for the next alumni bulletin. I set it to publish on February 1st, Valentine's Day, in foster care, the day I'd finally severed my last hope for their love. The weeks leading up to publication felt like waiting for a storm. Every text from Dad, "We love you," every Instagram story tagged #family time, fueled my anticipation. I'd built this slow burn reveal masterfully, layer upon layer of truth. On February 1st at 8:00 a.m., I saw the bulletin hit inboxes 5,000 plus alumni and parents. True to plan, I received 2 notifications within minutes. The first was from Sarah Holy, "Your piece dropped. People are sharing it like wildfire." The second was a read receipt from my mom's email. Hers was the only one I hadn't blocked for this reason. My phone buzzed non-stop for the next hour, congratulatory messages from classmates, notes from strangers applauding my courage, and 10 unread emails from Laura and Greg. I ignored them. That evening, I heard a faint knock on my apartment door. It was a delivery man carrying a single wilting rose in a plain paper sleeve. No note. My stomach tightened. Then came the barrage voicemails at 3 a.m. My sister's voice cracking, Dad's imploring tone, Mom's silent weeping. None addressed the truth. They begged for mercy. I didn't respond. By morning, my inbox had over 50 unread emails, offers of pro bono legal advice foundations, seeking donation, and countless strangers sharing similar abandonment stories. My phone, once a source of anxiety, now buzzed with solidarity. That night, as I lay in bed, the coil inside me finally loosened. The rage remained, but it no longer burned. Instead, it smoldered into something quieter: acceptance. I'd forced their accountability not through violence or public shaming, but by reclaiming my own narrative. I'd shown the world and them that truth cannot stay buried forever. And for the first time since that ride to the foster home, I slept peacefully, knowing the storm had broken and I was still standing. The day I confronted them arrived on a gray Thursday morning. I'd arranged to meet my parents at the small cafe near their old house, ironically, the place where they'd once dropped me off as if I was luggage. I arrived early, heart thundering, carrying a slim manila envelope. Inside was my evidence. Printed screenshots of every Instagram post, the travel blog entries, the alumni essay with its damning paragraph. even the serialized birthday cards they'd sent me. I sat at a corner table, trying to look casual, as I flipped through the photos on my phone one last time. When Laura and Greg walked in, they glanced around nervously, avoiding my eyes. Emma hovered behind them, shoulders hunched, as if she expected to be scolded. My parents settled into the chairs opposite me. For a moment, nobody spoke. They looked older than I remembered, lines of guilt etching their faces. I took a breath. "I sent you the alumni newsletter," I began, voice steady. "I hope you read it." Their expressions flickered recognition, then panic. Emma looked at me with wide, nervous eyes. I slid the envelope across toward Laura. "This is everything you told me about not having the money. Every post where you ignored that promise. Every caption where you laughed about financial freedom. I kept it all." Laura's hands shook as she picked up the envelope. Greg's jaw tightened. He stared across the table at me, searching my face for a trace of the boy they'd abandoned. "Adam, we're sorry," he said. His apology was limp, rehearsed. "We made mistakes." I shook my head. "Mistakes? You lied to me for years. You lied to everyone." I tapped the envelope. "You spun a story about hardship so you could leave me behind. Then you posted photos of fancy vacations, pure opulence. That's not just a mistake. That's betrayal." Emma reached out, her voice small. I'm sorry too, Adam. I didn't know, but I cut her off gently. "You weren't supposed to know," I said. "That was the point." I let the silence stretch, letting them feel the weight of my words. "I haven't wanted this to be public, but you made it public. You put your lies on display." I had to set the record straight. My mother blinked back tears. "Please, can we make this right? We can pay you back whatever you need." I smiled a sad, tired smile. "It's not about money anymore." I leaned forward. "You know what I lost: childhood, trust, family. You can't buy that back." I pushed the envelope back to them. "Keep this. It belongs to you." They looked at the photos, seeing their happy, carefree faces staring back. I stood up and dropped a final sentence. "I forgive you on my terms. You'll let me live my life without interference. You won't contact me again unless you can show me real change." I walked out, leaving them speechless. Over the next week, I watched from a distance as their world unraveled. The alumni board responded to my essay with calls for comment. Friends and neighbors began asking awkward questions. Creditors reached out after seeing evidence of the parents' lavish spending far beyond their means. Emma's social media collapsed under a wave of comments. "How could you? Your parents abandoned your own brother." She posted a shaky apology video admitting she'd been blind to their lies. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages of support. Old friends, strangers who'd lived similar stories, and the Millers who simply said, "We're proud of you." That might have been the proudest moment of my life. In the weeks that followed, I settled into a new rhythm. I graduated college with honors, moved into my own apartment, and started a job I loved. Sometimes I think back to that 12-year-old boy clutching a duffel bag, wondering if his future held abandonment or acceptance. Today, I know it held both abandonment by blood and acceptance by choice. I'm not defined by what they did. I'm defined by what I chose to become. And that, in the end, was the greatest revenge of all. I built a life they could not destroy. The days after that cafe meeting felt surreal. I woke up the next morning to a silent phone, no desperate texts, no guilt-laden voicemails. Instead, there were kind messages from people I barely knew, former classmates who remembered me as the shy kid with a quick smile. Neighbors who'd only ever waved when I rode my bike past their porch, even one from the college librarian who'd always offered the last blueberry muffin when she saw me studying late. Their words of support washed over me like warm sunlight breaking through a cold storm. I carried my coffee to the window, took a deep breath, and allowed myself a small, genuine smile for the first time in years. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, my parents' carefully constructed life began to unravel. I learned through a friend in their social circle that creditors were hounding them, shocked to discover bank statements revealing purchases far beyond their stated means. vacations booked while they'd claimed financial hardship. One by one, their so-called friends distanced themselves, messaging polite regrets about unforeseen circumstances that prevented visits. I didn't celebrate their discomfort. I simply acknowledged that fairness had been restored. Emma's reaction was the most complex. I saw her shaky apology post. She spoke about growing up under parents who'd always overshadowed everything except her successes, how she finally understood the magnitude of their betrayal, and how sorry she was that I'd suffered in silence. I watched the comments scroll, some forgiving, others merciless, but beneath it all, I sensed her genuine remorse. A few days later, a single direct message appeared on my phone. "I'd like to talk, just you and me. Whenever you're ready." I read it, thumb hovering over reply, but I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sent a brief note to the Millers. I might reach out to Emma soon. Thanks for everything. Work and life moved forward. I immersed myself in my new job, editing and proofreading content for an educational nonprofit. I loved the quiet purpose of it, turning raw ideas into clear, polished stories that helped students learn. On my lunch breaks, I walked along the river trail near the office, watching joggers and families with strollers pass by. Sometimes when the wind caught my hair or a bird's song lingered in the trees, I'd catch myself thinking I deserve this peace. And I did. A month later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name typed in crisp black letters. Inside was an airline ticket to my parents' old vacation home on Lake Tahoe, along with a note in Mom's handwriting. "We've learned our lesson. We're selling the house and letting go of everything that mattered more than our family. Please come visit before everything disappears." I let the envelope sit on the counter for days. My heart thudded at the thought of seeing that place, the same place they used to show off their wealth to the world to justify leaving me behind. I thought of the boy I once was, nervous and hopeful, imagining that maybe, just maybe, they regretted it all. In the end, I decided not to go. I packed the letter and ticket into a folder marked closure and tucked it into a drawer. Instead, I spent that weekend camping with friends beneath an open sky. No pretenses, no hidden agendas, just crackling campfires and laughter echoing through the pines. It felt right. I didn't owe them another confrontation. I owed myself freedom. Over the following months, I noticed an inner shift. I no longer flinched at the sound of my parents' names, nor did I feel a sudden ache when I saw travel photos online. The ache was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence I carried in my shoulders. On a crisp autumn afternoon, I ran into my former social worker at the grocery store. She looked surprised, but pleased to see me. "You look happy," she said, and I was genuinely, fully happy. That evening, I sat down to write a simple journal entry, the first in years I lived without them, and I lived well. I reclaimed my own story. For the boy you were, for the man you've become. I closed the notebook and let the pen rest. In the soft lamplight, I realized that real revenge wasn't in ruining their lives, it was in rebuilding mine. And I had succeeded beyond any measure they ever set for me. And that's my story, how a 12-year-old boy left at a stranger's doorstep found the strength to turn betrayal into his greatest comeback. I rebuilt my life on my own terms, proved to myself that blood isn't the only measure of family, and discovered that true justice isn't about vengeance, but reclaiming your own worth. If you've ever felt sidelined or invisible, remember your value isn't defined by anyone else's choices. You have the power to write your own ending. If this video resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe for more real-life stories of resilience, and ring that bell so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts or similar experiences in the comments. I read every single one, and you're not alone in this. Thanks for watching, and until next time, choose yourself first, you deserve it. Story 2. The sound of the wrapping paper tearing is something I will always remember. The only sound anyone could hear was that. No laughter, no music. Just that soft crinkle as Kaya, my daughter, carefully opened her present. She tugged at the corners with tiny fingers as if they were the most valuable thing in the world. And she did smile for a moment. That gentle, hopeful smile children have when they believe that magic may still exist. However, her entire face changed when she opened the box. First confusion, then a hint of a more serious hurt. Perhaps. She looked at me as her little shoulder tensed. There was nothing in the box. Before she uttered a word, I noticed it. The bottom is just plain cardboard. Not even tissue paper. Not a toy. Not a single note. Nothing at all. I tried to interpret what I was seeing by blinking. Was I wrong? Has anything fallen out? I heard him before I could say anything, but perhaps someone had forgotten to pack it. My dad, Frank, he gave a sharp chuckle. Like a winter bark, short and cold. He folded his arms, leaned back in his armchair, and spoke. Children like her shouldn't have any expectations. There are already enough leeches in the world. My heart fell. Kaya stopped. She left her hands in the box, as if she hadn't yet seen the present, as if it were tucked away in a corner or concealed beneath the flaps. However, nothing was present. The warmth shot up my chest. My hands, which were resting on my lap, shook. I wanted to say anything at all, but the words stuck like splinters in my throat. Then my sister Sandra muttered and snorted. She always expects handouts just like her mother. Not worth it. I tightened my jaw. The burn behind my eyes threatened to spill over, and I could feel the muscles in my face tensing up. I made myself turn to face Kaya. She wasn't in tears. Not quite yet. However, her chin was shaking as it does just before it cracks, and her lips were pressed firmly. Tears were welling up in her large, gentle eyes. She couldn't let her pride get in the way. She gave me another look without requesting assistance, just making sure she should act as though it didn't hurt. I detested myself at that precise moment. I detested the fact that I had brought her here and that I had foolishly hoped for a typical Christmas. That I believed my dad could be someone else. That I wanted them to love Kaya as much as I did after seeing what a lovely, compassionate, and imaginative girl she was. However, they failed to spot her. She was simply an extension of me to them, a reminder of my failure and divorce. According to them, my life was a mess. With the exception of the gentle hum of the heater and the ticking of the grandfather clock behind Frank's chair, the room was completely quiet. Like it was building to a moment I wasn't prepared for. Every second sounded louder than the one before it. Kaya once more glanced down at the empty box. She touched the edge with her fingers. Then slowly, she folded the flaps shut. Her hands were shaking now, and then she whispered something. "I got you a gift too, Grandpa." Everyone turned. Frank looked up, that smug grin still on his face. "Oh yeah," he said, half laughing. "This'll be good." But Kaya didn't back down. She reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a small piece of paper folded with such care it made my chest ache. She took a step forward and held it out to him with both hands. And right then I knew this moment wasn't over. Something was coming. Something none of us were ready for. I hadn't been home for Christmas in over 2 years. Not since the divorce. Not since the shame. Not since everything I'd been trying to hold together finally cracked wide open. Kaya. She wanted to see them. She asked me 3 weeks before Christmas. "Mom, do I have a grandpa?" That was her way of asking why we were always alone during the holidays. Why we didn't have matching pajamas or giant trees or cousins to run around with. So I said yes. And when she asked if we could visit him this year, I said yes again, against my better judgment. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought time would have softened them. Maybe I believed just for a moment that when they saw Kaya, when they really looked at her, they'd feel something. Warmth, regret, love, anything. Instead, the minute we pulled into the driveway, I felt that old weight settle back onto my shoulders. That invisible tension that coils around your ribs like barbed wire when you're trying to smile for people who don't really want you there. Their house hadn't changed. Still cold, still perfect, still spotless. In that way that feels less like home and more like a museum. My mother greeted us with that plastic politeness she'd mastered over the years. A quick hug for me. Soft pat on the head for Kaya. Her eyes lingered too long on the scuff marks on Kaya's boots. I saw it, how she took her in like an item on a shelf, deciding whether or not she belonged. Sandra barely looked up from her phone when we walked in. She offered Kaya a half-hearted hey, then went right back to scrolling. I could already feel my stomach tightening. And then there was Frank, my father. He was in his usual chair by the fireplace, whiskey glass in one hand, TV remote in the other. Didn't even stand up. Just gave a nod and muttered, "Didn't think you'd actually show up." That was his way of saying hello. Kaya gave him a shy wave, her mitten fingers poking through the wool. "Hi, Grandpa," she said softly, like she was testing the word out loud for the first time. He grunted. I don't know why I still hoped for more. Maybe because Kaya was trying so hard. She'd made little drawings for everyone, carefully colored, folded, and tucked into envelopes with their names on the front. She even asked me how to spell to my Aunt Sandra because she wanted it to be perfect. She worked on them every night for a week. I wanted this to be special for her. I wanted her to feel like she had a family, even if they were far from perfect. I scraped together what I could from tips and extra shifts just to buy her one nice outfit, a little gift to open, and enough gas to get us there. That morning, as I tied her scarf, she looked up at me and said, "Do you think they'll like my drawings?" And I said, "Sweetheart, they're going to love them." But in the pit of my stomach, I already knew the truth. I was bringing her into a house where kindness was currency. They never gave out for free, where smiles were measured and love had conditions. Still, I tried. I told myself this was about Kaya, not me. That I could keep my chin up, play nice, pretend for one day that everything was okay. But as I watched her heart quietly break in front of them over something as cruel as an empty gift box, I realized they hadn't changed, and I wasn't sure they ever would. Kaya handed out her little envelopes like they were treasures. She moved through the room so gently, like she was afraid to disturb any. Each envelope had a name on the front written in her careful, blocky handwriting. She gave one to my mother first, then Sandra, then even my brother Matt, who'd barely spoken a word since we walked in. When she got to Frank, she paused for just a second, long enough that I held my breath, but she smiled, lifted the envelope and said, "Merry Christmas, Grandpa." He didn't look up from the television, just held out a hand like she was delivering the mail, not offering a piece of herself. She moved back to the couch and sat beside me. Her face was still lit up hopeful. She had no idea how cold the room had gotten. Then Frank picked up a large box from beneath the tree. It was wrapped in silver paper, topped with a red bow, almost too neatly. He held it out toward Kaya with a grunt. Her eyes widened. "For me," he shrugged. "Says your name, doesn't it?" She looked at me first, like she needed permission. I nodded, despite the fact that my stomach twisted. Pulling the box into her lap, she scooted to the floor. The paper was handled with reverence by her tiny hands. I saw her relish each second, the meticulous unfolding, the UN taping of every edge. She wished to recall it. Then the cover was removed. I witnessed it as she looked inside. Just the moment she knew it was empty. There was no crumple in her face, not immediately. Rather, her brows furrowed in perplexity. As though there might be something stuck at the bottom, she reached in. Unsure, she glanced up at me. The box contained nothing. Nothing. This time, Frank let out a loud laugh. "What were you anticipating? Something genuine." He leaned back and scoffed. "The world doesn't reward you for simply being there, child." Kaya blinked. Her hands went cold. I was immobile at the time. Sandra spoke up from the corner of the couch, always waiting for an opportunity to delve deeper. She always expects to be handed things just like her mother. Not surprisingly. It was like a punch to my chest. I looked over at her. "Don't, Sandra." She smirked and lifted a brow. "Why, it's accurate." Kaya had stopped talking. She still had the box in her lap. Opens wide, revealing nothing within. I watched her realize that the room had turned against her. I detested them. I detested them for laughing as if it were all a joke, making her feel inferior and making her doubt her value. She remained motionless when I reached for her. She simply stared at the box as if she waited long enough inside, it would somehow fill itself. I was yelling, "Speak up, defend yourself." However, I didn't want to cause a stir, not in her presence. That's the problem with living in such a family. When cruel things happen, you learn to freeze. Through clenched teeth, you learn to smile. And I had been doing that for a long time. It was almost like normal. But it wasn't normal. Kaya was only 7. She didn't know how to put on a mask yet. She didn't know how to swallow that kind of pain. Then she looked up at Frank. Her voice was quiet, barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the room like a bell. "It's okay," she said. "Grandpa, I got you a present." And just like that, the whole room shifted. No one spoke. No one laughed. She reached into her coat pocket, and I realized something was about to happen that none of them would forget. I stared at her completely still as Kaya reached into her coat pocket. The room had gone silent, so quiet I could hear the faint creak of the old floorboard under the Christmas tree. With every slight movement, my own breath felt too loud in my chest. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked small in her hands, fragile, even like something that could be crumpled and dismissed without a second thought. But she held it like it mattered, like it meant something. I whispered, "Kaya, maybe not now." She turned to me, and there was something in her eyes I didn't recognize. Not sadness, not hurt, but calm. Steady. She gave a little nod, the kind that said, "I have to do this." Then she turned to Frank. "I made this for you," she said. Frank didn't even lean forward. He just glanced at it with that same bored expression he always wore when someone dared ask him to feel something. "Oh yeah," he muttered, sipping his drink. "You draw me a snowman or something." There was sarcasm in his voice, the kind he always used when he wanted to make you feel small without raising it. But Kaya didn't flinch. She walked across the room and held it out to him with both hands. That's when I noticed her fingers were shaking. I knew that feeling. The way your hands betray you when your heart's thudding in your chest, when you're trying to be brave, even though every part of you wants to run. He took it from her like it meant nothing, slid it open with one hand while still holding his glass in the other. Then he looked down and stopped. I couldn't see what was on the paper from where I sat, but I saw his face. It didn't twist in confusion or irritation like I expected. Instead, his eyebrows drew together. He blinked once, then again his jaw slackened just slightly like he'd forgotten what he was doing. The entire room seemed to lean in. "What is it?" Sandra asked, impatient. He didn't answer. He just stared. Kaya stood there, hands clasped in front of her, now watching him quietly like she wasn't sure what came next either. I got up and crossed the room slowly, almost afraid to break the moment. I stepped beside her and gently placed my hand on her back. She didn't look at me. She just kept her eyes on Frank, and he looked older than I'd ever seen him. Not angry, not smug, just still. He folded the paper carefully, deliberately, almost reverently, and placed it on the side table next to his chair. Then he stood up. No one knew what to say. No one moved. He walked out of the room without a word. The sound of his footsteps down the hallway was the only thing we could hear. He didn't slam the door, didn't shout, just left. I looked down at Kaya. Her voice was quiet when she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I knelt beside her, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, "Now, sweetheart, you did something brave." Sandra muttered something under her breath, but this time I didn't care because I knew whatever Kaya had drawn, whatever she had written, it got through to him in a way. None of us ever could. She didn't fight back with anger. She didn't cry or scream or run. She gave him a gift, one that reminded him he was still human even if he'd forgotten. And I think just maybe that scared him more than anything else. I didn't see my father for the rest of the day. He didn't return to the living room, didn't come back for dinner, not even when my mother called out that dessert was ready, in that overly sweet tone she used when pretending everything was fine. Tanya didn't mention him again that evening. She played quietly with the ribbon from one of her other small gifts and helped me fold the wrapping paper scraps like it was any other night. But I could tell her mind was somewhere else. Every now and then, her eyes would wander toward the hallway where Frank had disappeared, like she was waiting for something. But nothing happened. Not that day. We left early the next morning. I told them we had plans back in the city, but the truth was I couldn't bear to spend another second pretending. Sandra didn't even rise to bid farewell. My mom gave me a plate of leftover ham wrapped in foil and advised me to drive carefully. Nothing about what transpired. It somehow hurt even more that no one inquired about Kaya's condition. It was a quiet ride home. Kaya gazed at the snow fluttering past the trees outside the window. At one point, I reached over and took her hand. She gave a squeeze in return. I didn't mention the illustration. She was obviously very personal, and I didn't want to force her to explain it. I considered it the entire way home, but I didn't want to destroy whatever magic had existed at that precise moment. My father, who once referred to me as too sentimental to cry at a movie, was impressed by what she had drawn, become pale, and silently exit the room. 4 days later, I learned. It arrived on our porch in a little unmarked box. Keylor's name was carefully written in block letters across the top with no return address. Slowly, as if uncertain whether it was safe to hope, she opened it. There was a small music box inside. Vintage, wooden lid with hand-carved edges and painted small roses. She turned the crank, and somewhere over the rainbow it played. A note was also present. It was only one line written to the bravest girl I know in a shaky, strange scrawl. I appreciate you keeping her in mind. We didn't need a signature, but there was none. Like it was made of gold, Kaya held the box tightly to her chest. At first, she remained silent. She simply grinned while holding it. When I finally sat down on the floor beside her, I asked Kaya, "What did you draw for Grandpa?" "It was a picture of him holding hands with Grandma and me," she said, looking up at me. She spoke softly. I recalled how she made him laugh, so I told him I hoped he would smile again someday. My throat constricted. I remained silent. It was the only reason I couldn't. I had forgotten that aspect of him even existed. Before grief hardened him, and before the years turned him cruel, the man used to laugh and smile. Kaya gave him a piece of something he believed he had lost forever after seeing through all of that. Not guilt, not sympathy. I hope she refrained from trying to fix him. All she did was remind him that he was once someone to be remembered. He also gave her something in exchange. Perhaps not forgiveness or love, but a start. And that's sufficient at times. Kayla now keeps the music box on her bedside table. She winds it up before bed every night. Not always to pay attention. She prefers to hold it sometimes. In her hands to feel its weight, to be aware of its existence. The way a child may hold on to a stuffed animal that they no longer need but are unable to part with. Although she hasn't talked much about that day since she occasionally brings up Grandma, whom she never even met but talks about as if she were still alive. As if Kaya is familiar with her from the stories I've shared and the peaceful place she left behind. Perhaps she does. Frank didn't give a call. Was there no follow-up message from him? No. I apologize. No justifications. He's not like that. Perhaps he will never be that way. However, I received a letter a week after the music box arrived. It wasn't a dress, tequila. It was for me. It was short. 3 lines written in the same uneven handwriting. "I was wrong about you. She's a good kid. I hope you're doing okay." No name, but I knew. And for reasons I can't quite explain, I cried after reading it. It wasn't because it improved everything. Not because it ended the years of silence or the way he used to view me as a name tag wearing disappointment. But because, for once, it felt like he saw me. Above all, he caught sight of Kaya. He saw what I've always known, that she's special, that she has this way of peeling back the coldness in a room and showing people their own warmth even when they don't deserve it. She's not loud, she doesn't demand attention, but she changes things. She changed him. Not completely, but enough. Enough to make a man who'd shut the door on the world open. Just a crack. Enough to make someone who believed only in toughness and silence. Sit down and listen to the music from a little girl's drawing. People ask me sometimes why I went back that Christmas, why I let them near her, why I didn't protect her better. And the truth is, I thought I was. I thought shielding her from their coldness would be enough. That not talking about them, not visiting, not engaging, that it would protect her heart. But Kaya didn't need protection. She needed truth. She needed to meet them, to see the world for what it is, beautiful and cruel, broken and hopeful, all tangled together. And somehow, instead of getting lost in it, she decided to add her own light. She didn't need revenge. She didn't even want an apology. She just wanted to give a gift. And that gift, as simple as it was, did something I couldn't do in 30 years. It opened a door not wide, not forever, but enough for a note to get through. Enough for a song to play in the quiet. Enough for a tired old man to remember. A part of himself he thought was gone. Kaya reminded me of something that day too, that sometimes kindness is the most radical act, that a whisper can carry more weight than a scream. And that when we choose love, even when it's hard, even when it's not returned, we create something no one can take away. A moment, a shift, a gift. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and comment, and maybe give someone in your life the gift of a second chance today. You never know what doors it might open. Story 3. The weight of the envelope in my hand is still fresh in my mind. Even though it wasn't heavy, it seemed to be pulling my whole body downward, as if simply holding it thickened and made breathing more difficult. I glanced up at Carla, my mother. When she thought she was doing something clever behind her, she always wore that tight smirk with her arms crossed. My brother Ryan had already driven his brand new BMW halfway down the driveway. His birthday present, actually his second one as the first one, seemed to be the wrong color. And me, I was about to turn 18. The day you formally become an adult is a significant milestone. I didn't anticipate cake balloons or even a card. I've learned not to get too excited about my family, but rather about some small, pitiful aspect of myself. I still secretly hoped for something. A hug, a kind word, an indication that I might be somewhat important. My mother claimed that I had been given a golden ticket to the life of my dreams, but instead, I had been given a one-way bus ticket to Phoenix. You're legally an adult now. Time to make your own way. I stared at the slip of paper. The bus was scheduled to leave the next morning. No return, no note. Just a ticket. My hands trembled as I clenched it. Not from fear exactly, but from this sick, boiling mix of shame and disbelief. In my ears, my heart thumped. It was hard to tell if I was going to cry or scream or both, but I didn't do either. I looked up again slowly this time. Her expression hadn't changed. Arms still crossed, lips still curled in that smug, dismissive way. She was actually proud of herself. Ryan walked past the front door again and caught my eye. He didn't even bother to hide his grin. "Don't look so surprised," he laughed. "At least you got something." I opened my mouth, closed it. What could I even say that I had spent the last year working late nights online just to save a few $100 that I'd applied to community colleges in secret? Because I knew they wouldn't support me. That I had birthdays growing up where they forgot I even existed. Instead, I just nodded. I have no idea why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe I just didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. "Thanks," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. That was the only victory I had in that moment. Carla raised her eyebrows. "You should be grateful for this much. Grateful that words sat in my chest like a stone. Was I supposed to be grateful for being pushed out like trash left on the curb?" I turned around and walked upstairs. My legs felt like they were moving on autopilot. My room, the same one I'd grown up in, suddenly looked smaller, colder. The posters on the wall felt childish. The bedding I picked out 2 years ago looked cheap. I sat down on the edge of the bed, ticket still in my hand. The silence was loud. The only sound was the ticking clock on my nightstand. Tick, tick, tick. Like it was counting down to the moment I disappear. I stared at the wall for what felt like hours. My mind was racing but numb at the same time. Was I angry? Hurt? Relieved? Maybe all of it. Or maybe just done. Because somewhere in that silence, something inside me snapped. Not in a violent way. It was like a thread finally broke loose. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to leave and they'd never see me the same again. The next morning, I watched the sun rise through the cracked blinds in my room. If I could even still call it mine. The light painted stripes across the floor, golden and soft, completely at odds with how I felt inside. I hadn't slept. Not even a minute. My suitcase sat zipped by the door, packed hours earlier with just the essentials, some clothes, my sketchbook, and the journal I kept hidden behind my dresser. It was strange how calm I felt, like the grief had already burned itself out in the night and left only clarity behind. There was no dramatic goodbye. No, I'll miss you. No one even came to check if I'd left. I walked down the stairs quietly. Carla sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, sipping black coffee like it was just another Tuesday. She didn't even look up. Bus leaves at 10, she muttered. I know. Still, she didn't look at me. I guess eye contact would have made it too real. David, my father wasn't even home. He'd left early for work like he always did when things got uncomfortable. That was his thing. Disappear during the storm, reappear when it's sunny. I used to resent it, but now I just accepted it. And Ryan, he was outside polishing his BMW in the driveway. The same car they had surprised him with 2 years earlier. Red leather seats, custom rims, the works. I remember how they all laughed that day. How Carla cried happy tears as she filmed him revving the engine. I don't think I've ever seen her cry for me. Not when I won awards in school. Not when I came home in tears after Ryan told his friends to make fun of me at lunch. Not even when I broke my wrist falling off my bike at 11 and walked myself to urgent care. Carla was always adept at distancing herself. She referred to it as tough love. I referred to it as absence. It was like being a ghost growing up in that house. That was still alive. I was there in the background. Silent, submissive, and simple to overlook. It all revolved around Ryan. He was gregarious, athletic, and boisterous. He made no request for authorization. He simply took a step back. They even permitted him to be worshipped. And me, I shrank myself. I became skilled at reading the room, avoiding Carla's moods, and keeping Ryan in the dark. I became proficient at smiling when I wanted to yell. When no one asked me how I felt, I was good at listening. They were good at acting as though it didn't hurt when they forgot I was there. I was never blind, though. I could tell Carla had done something right by the way she looked at Ryan, and the way she regarded me as though I were an issue that she had yet to resolve. I would occasionally ponder whether I brought to mind something she detested about herself. Or perhaps I was simply too silent to make a difference. Actually, long before that birthday, I no longer required their approval. I had been keeping money in a secret account from freelancing art jobs. I had applied to take classes online. I even began using small gigs to network with people. I wasn't just waiting to be rescued. I wanted something from them, even though I knew that wasn't going to happen. Perhaps not love, but recognition of my existence and importance. That in Ryan's spotlight, I wasn't merely a shadow. I didn't understand. Rather, I received silence and a bus ticket. So I went out. Not in a dramatic way, not in a speech. Take a deep breath, and a final glance at the home I once called home. As well as when the bus left the curb, something whispered inside me. Finally, it's your turn. The smell of coffee and old leather filled the Greyhound bus. I pretended to be somewhere else as I sat by the window and held my backpack close to my chest. Another person. I didn't have to look at the crumpled ticket in my hoodie pocket. Phoenix. I had never seen such a city. I would walk into a future with nothing left to lose, but I wasn't sure I was prepared for it. I refrained from crying. Not on the bus. Not when the skyline of the city appeared. Not even when there was nobody waiting on the other side when I got off. If I claimed it didn't hurt, though, I would be lying. The realization that your family never wanted to know you causes this pain. It's not very sharp. It's monotonous and unchanging. Like a bruise you forget about until someone bumps into it again. It flared every time I saw someone my age hugged by their parents or FaceTiming their moms. I'd scroll past happy family photos online and wonder what it was like to be chosen to be capped. I rented a small room above a bakery. The owner, a kind woman named Ruth, barely asked questions when I paid up front for 2 weeks. I didn't have much, but I had enough. Thanks to a few design gigs I'd landed online. Logo work, flyers, album covers. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. And then there was Marianne. She had been one of my freelance clients, a tech founder based in Phoenix who liked my work ethic and said I had an old soul. When I emailed her explaining my situation, she responded within minutes. "Meet me," she wrote. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office, wear confidence." So I did. Marianne was everything. Carla wasn't warm, direct, sharp. She didn't coddle me, but she saw me, really saw me. Within a week, she had me working part-time on her startup's branding. She even assigned one of her drivers to pick me up for meetings until I could afford my own transportation. It felt unreal, like someone had finally opened a door I'd been knocking on my entire life. But just as I was starting to feel safe, they called. First, it was Ryan. A text, of course. He never called. "Dinner, Saturday. Everyone's home. You should come. Mom said so. Mom said so." As if that still meant anything. I stared at the message for a long time. My heart pounded. Not from fear, but from anger. Not because I needed them, but because I knew they still thought I needed them. What did they expect, that I'd come crawling back wide-eyed and desperate to be let in again? That's when the idea hit me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to make a scene or scream or throw things. That wasn't me. But I did want them to see what they threw away. Not as a plea, but as a mirror. I opened Marianne's contact and texted, "Do you think your driver could help me make an impression Saturday night?" Her reply came seconds later. A limo or a statement piece, I smiled for the first time in days. Both. The plan formed easily after that. I'd show up at dinner dressed in confidence, stepping out of a car that didn't scream wealth but independence. Freedom. A message wrapped in luxury. They thought they sent me away with nothing. But I was about to walk back in like someone who had everything. Saturday crept up on me like a storm you can feel in your bones before the sky even changes. I could feel it in the way my stomach twisted as I opened my closet, scanning the few outfits I had brought with me. None of them said what I needed them to say. So I went shopping. I didn't go to some flashy designer store. I didn't need labels to make a statement. I walked into a local boutique tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore. The owner was this older woman named Alma, who greeted me like I was her granddaughter, coming home from college. I told her I needed something for a family dinner. She didn't ask questions. She just looked me over and said, "You want them to feel what they lost? Exactly that." We found a black fitted jumpsuit with a low open back. Elegant. Bold, but still simple. We paired it with small gold earrings and nude heels. I didn't want to appear wealthy. I wanted to appear invincible. Upon returning to my room, I spread everything out on the bed and gazed at it. It was odd that clothing could have such significance. It was more than just fabric. It was armor. Marianne's driver pulled up in front of the bakery on Saturday afternoon. The limo had tinted windows and was sleek and dark gray, unquestionably commanding but subtle. Ruth gave me a slight nod as she peered out the bakery window. I climbed in after waving. My chest is thumping with my heart. The interior had a subtle floral scent mixed with leather. Through concealed speakers, soft music was played. I leaned back, let out a slow breath, and muttered to myself, "There's nothing you're going there to prove. All you're doing is reminding them of the person they lost." The limo arrived in the area where I was raised. Everything had the same appearance. However, my feelings were different. I remained seated without flinching. I didn't mentally practice my lines. I didn't consider whether they would approve of my attire. I didn't give a damn. The house appeared. Perfect hedges and white siding. In the driveway, Ryan's car was still shining as if it had never been moved. Before opening the door, I requested 2 minutes from the driver. I took one final look at myself in the mirror. I applied delicate yet accurate makeup. My eyes appeared more focused and sharp. My lips turned scarlet and formed a tiny smile. I didn't feel anxious. I was prepared. I sent Ryan a text. He gave a thumbs up and said, "Be there in 5." He did, of course. I pictured Carla critiquing the dinner rolls while they were all inside. David is acting as though he is reading something on his phone. The sun is still present in the room, Ryan. I questioned whether they had made room at the table for me at all. It's too late now. The limousine smoothly came to a halt. The crunch of gravel beneath the tires caught my attention. I sensed the change in energy as if the air itself sensed that something significant was going to occur. After exiting, the driver turned around and unlocked the door. I drew a final breath, the kind that slows your heart and straightens your spine. Then I went outside, and they looked at me for the first time in my life, looked closely. Their expressions went cold. Carlos's eyes narrowed. Ryan's smirk faded and David's face became unreadable. I failed to wave. I didn't grin. I remained motionless for a moment. Not bothered, unfazed, unquestionable. And I wasn't their daughter or the background figure in their idyllic family portrait at that precise moment. I was the unexpected storm they didn't anticipate. There was no sound in the front yard. It was Ryan who spoke first. "Tonight, someone is making a lot of effort." He spoke in a light, sardonic tone. When he couldn't understand what was happening, he spoke in his typical tone. This time, though, there was another reason. Unease. Confusion. Like he couldn't decide if he should laugh or feel threatened. Carla stepped forward. Her arms crossed like armor as she slowly scanned me from head to toe. She pressed that thin line to her lips. I was too familiar. Underneath the surface was her disapproval. "You came in a limo?" she asked, tone sharp, almost mocking. "Where'd you get the money for that?" I smiled slightly, not wide, not smug, just enough to let her know. I heard the question but wasn't going to hand her an answer. Behind her, David lingered by the doorway, eyes flickering between all of us. He didn't say anything. Just held that same distant look like he was watching someone else's drama unfold on TV. "I didn't come to impress you," I said finally. My voice was calm even. "I came to show you what you let go." Ryan snorted, but no one laughed with him. Even he could feel it now. Something was different. We stood there for a moment, me in heels on their pristine driveway, them watching like I'd grown wings overnight. "Dinner's getting cold," Carla muttered, turning toward the door. "Well, if you're coming in, come in." I remained motionless. I let her walk back inside without me. Ryan followed, mumbling something under his breath. After hesitating, David gave me an almost contrite nod before entering as well. For a few more seconds, I remained outside and allowed the silence to envelop me. I could have turned right, gotten back in that limousine, and vanished once more. I didn't travel this far for an entrance, though. I walked in because I wanted closure. The dining table was arranged with the plates in perfect alignment as usual. A wine bottle. Without a doubt, Ryan was too young to be drinking. And in the middle was a roast that smelled too good to have come from Carla. Most likely purchased from a store. Everybody sat. Nobody mentioned Grace. Nobody inquired about my well-being. Ryan broke the silence at last. "What the heck? Now you're wealthy." I gave him a looked closely, and he appeared small for the first time. Still residing here. It was still circling their approval like the sun. Smug as ever, but now hollow. "However, I'm free and doing better without you," I said. Carla laughed. Oh, don't pretend you didn't receive anything from us. I cocked my head. You're correct. I have something very valuable that you gave me. Bewildered, she blinked. What? I gently rested my elbows on the table as I leaned forward. A one-way bus pass. And there it was. The silence was a shock. Because she understood then that I had not come to boast or to plead. In order to make it clear to them that I was no longer the invisible girl sitting silently at the edge of the table, I decided to draw a line. I was done playing their game because I wasn't the family's fallback kid or a letdown. I slowly got to my feet, removing my jumpsuit as though I were shaking off years' worth of dust. This dinner is unnecessary for me. This house is unnecessary for me. I also don't require your affection. Then quietly, but I added with a strength that filled the room, you are not necessary to me. Like smoke from a fire, the words lingered there. Nobody said anything. Not Ryan, not David, not Carla. I made my way to the door. They stepped back out into the night, their heels clicking on their polished floor. Without a word, the door of the limousine opened. As we withdrew, I danced outside the tinted glass, sliding in the city lights. And I was gone in an instant. It was a quiet ride back. The kind of silence that isn't devoid of meaning. It seems earned. As we traveled through the city, I rested my head against the cool window and observed the streetlights turning into golden streaks. I didn't feel like I was fleeing from anything for the first time in my life. I had no intention of running away, hiding, or proving anything. I simply felt calm. I reflected on that meal and how none of them came after me, how nobody attempted to stop me when I walked out. It didn't hurt either. I was most surprised by that. My throat didn't sting or have a lump in it. It was a silent affirmation that I had made the right decision. I was never seen by them. Not at all. Perhaps they would never. But at last, I got it. It was not my loss, but theirs. In order to fit into a mold that they never even created for me, I had spent years shrinking myself. To be easier, quieter, and more likable, I twisted myself. I made an effort to win their affection as if I had to be worthy of it. However, you shouldn't have to pursue love. It ought to meet you at your current location. That ticket was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I used to think it was the cruelest thing they had ever given me. My life began with that one-way bus ride. I had to start over because of it, but to discover who I was without their shadows looming over me on my own terms, to find out how strong, capable, and resilient I truly am. I no longer reside above the bakery. I was promoted to creative lead at Marianne's startup a month after that dinner. I moved into a tiny loft downtown using the money I had saved. My own room, my own furnishings, and my own regulations. I even had the ticket framed. To serve as a reminder of the beginning, they gave me the original one to Phoenix and hung it by my front door. Do I speak with my relatives? Not at all. A few weeks later, David sent a message. Something brief and ambiguous. I hope all is well with you. I didn't answer. I was once tagged by Ryan in an Instagram story. There is a quote about family always returning that is passive-aggressive. He was muted by me. Carla, nothing. And to be honest, I like it that way. I don't despise them. In that case, I'm still providing them with something. I've simply let go. Give up expecting them to apologize. Give up trying to get closure from people who wouldn't notice it if it were right in front of them. I made the decision for myself. I deserved the life I gave myself. Additionally, if you're viewing this, pondering whether you'll ever have the strength to abandon those who made you feel inferior, just be aware of this. You are already. Being the person you were destined to be doesn't require permission. You don't require their recognition, their applause, or their approval. You are necessary. The bus ticket was not an infraction. I was free. The limo and slip. It wasn't retaliation. It was a complete circle. A silent proclamation. Don't look at me right now. But now that I can see myself, that's all I ever needed. So no, the car was not given to me. I have something better. I left. I appreciate you hearing my story. In your own family, have you ever felt alienated, as if you were constantly compared, never enough, or invisible? Remember that you are not alone. Furthermore, your story doesn't stop there. Rejection can sometimes be the greatest gift life has to offer. Sometimes those who push us away are simply creating room for us to enter at last, who we are supposed to be. Your silence is not owed to anyone. Nobody is owed your suffering. However, you deserve the opportunity to start over. And just know that it could be your way out if you're holding your own symbolic ticket, whatever that may be. It's also your entry, though, into peace, freedom, and power. My story is not the only one. It might also be yours. And I hope you run with it if it is.